This is one of the dumbest topics on the planet, and I really didn't want to make a video on it. A hybrid mana controversy around the commander format and the panel itself, and its potential decision to change this in February has just gone off the rails. And other content creators have done their job on stating the facts, stating where we could go, where we can't go, and setting their line in the sand, if you will. But I think this video by Salubrious Snail actually puts out a reasonable amount of arguments for the discussion itself. It's a discussion about a discussion, very meta, and I think Salubrious Snail does go in a great direction. So I want to take a look at the video and go over not only it, but my thoughts on the situation itself, not necessarily on a hybrid mana, but the state of the Magic player base, commander, and just everything around discourse in this community. Because again, everything is getting out of hand. Also, Cloudflare is down and every single website is just not working as the recording of this video. So of course I'm going to make a react video. I can't even edit my TikToks because Scryfall is down.
Mana has been pretty front and center recently in EDH discourse, and I honestly find it a bit tiresome as a topic. So this video won't be about the merits of the proposed hybrid mana change. Not exactly, anyway.
Which is great. This is going to be a meta discussion about the discussion.
If you want a video that covers the meat of the issue, I'll be linking a Muldhound video on the subject that I quite liked. But now that the dust has settled a bit and the most sharp-edged of hybrid gladiators have dulled their role a bit, I want to talk about the conversation around it and what it means for us. I will only be discussing the hybrid mana change insofar as it's necessary to make a case that the stakes here are low and that...
Also, by the way, why is the blue tint here on the Azorius symbol different than the blue tint on the Simic symbol? It looks way better. So does this mean Simic is better than Azorius? Anyway, I think like what's going on here is a lot of Magic players are generally just angry. We see this in a lot of discourse right now. Maybe you could say, oh, the content you're making, Shaft, is reflective of that because you just be complaining all the time. But we see it in Magic discourse, I think in a great way with the Defor kind of stuff that's going on right now. So for those of you that don't know, Defor is a big limited creator and kind of player. And he had this big run in terms of Arena's Powered Cube, #1 and all that stuff. He's thrown out a bunch of content around it. And he recently made a post about how not only is Boros the best archetype in Powered Cube, and I think a lot of people agree on that generally. I didn't get to jump into Powered Cube too much. I was really interested in it, but regardless, it was a time thing. And so I can't speak to how good Boros was, but that's generally what the discourse is in terms of people's agreed tier list. But then he also says specifically, forcing Black Lotus in Powered Cube when you're playing Boros is not optimal. And a lot of people dogged on him for this. A lot of people like freaked the hell out. And I actually think it's kind of interesting, right? So generally speaking, in something like Vintage Cube or in any type of cube limited environment, mana accelerators like that are generally seen as extremely powerful. Black Lotuses, Soul Rings, all that stuff, especially if you draft something like a Soul Ring, you tend to actually draft into more cards that are maybe one color and multiple colorless mana. So you might lean towards a bit more of the red in 3, blue in 2 type of spells, because you could go land Soul Ring and then reasonably on turn 2 start playing like 3-drops like Broadside Bombardier, right? So like that kind of makes sense, right? So by extension, something like Black Lotus is also really powerful just generically. If you have like monocolored 2-drops, 3-drops, heck, even 4-drops, because you can go land Black Lotus, you can play those out, and that type of tempo is really powerful, especially depending on the creature or permanent that you are playing. So Black Lotus is generically powerful. You are always first picking that. And the packs where you get multiple of the power, like you get Black Lotus versus something like Mox, whatever, those are going to be the feel bad ones because you know you're passing on power, but you got to take the better one. So he says that kind of something like Black Lotus is not great in Boros, and I feel like that's because you generally are playing cards that maybe are lower converted mana cost, or are stuck on multiple colors, and or are multicolored. And so when you try to multi-spell, you can't really do that. So you have like a red card and a white card, but Black Lotus only gives you 1 mana of 1 color. And so you may not actually be able to play out multiple of them. Again, I'm speaking for him. This may not be the exact reason, but I understand the concepts of why you would pick Black Lotus in any general deck. So this discussion was not had because a lot of people are just generally here to dog on people, right? Like they want to hear an opinion that generally is just incorrect. They're not open to any any type of discourse whatsoever. And I've made statements like that before. I've kind of rescinded it and said, hey, you know what, even though this is still my opinion, I'm open to having the discussion, right? And a lot of people with this discourse, this Black Lotus discourse, were shutting him down, and coming out later, a lot of other creators were saying, maybe we should be a little bit more open to discussion. And the state of Magic, I think, really is highlighted by that, where people have this general opinion. They've watched maybe different content creators, read their own articles, or maybe even just through their singular gameplay experience. What I'm trying to highlight is through only one avenue of information, get an opinion, and they really force that down people's throats. Because right now, there isn't a collective understanding of Magic, because there are people that play Commander, there are people that play Commander and are casual, there are people that just don't play Commander and are casual, there are 1v1 players, there are like super spiky 1v1 players, there are the casuals that only play pre-modern, you know, like the non-official formats and all that stuff. Like, there is such a spread of Magic players, where it used to be very uniform before. It used to be just standard, extended to legacy, and like the modern players, right? Like it used to be very succinct, and then the limited players as well, which is a whole other group of people. But now it's expanded so much that people are just generally frustrated with not only the prices of Magic, the variety of Magic that doesn't line up with them, the amount of universes beyond, and again, the limited discourse where people are not willing to have the nuanced discussion of a player that is really talented, high up there in the limited ladder, has a vast amount of experience in Power Cube, and don't want to hear about how Black Lotus is actually suboptimal when you're forcing Boros, which is the best archetype in like a given environment. That's a really interesting discussion. So when it comes to hybrid mana, I think we can have something similar as well.
The reaction to the suggestion has been quite a notable and anomalous event, because regardless of whether the change itself ends up happening, this clearly has been an event for the online EDH community.
Yes.
For any of you blissfully out of the loop, a couple weeks back, Gavin Verhey of Wizards of the Coast made a set of announcements, both in livestream form and in post form. A lot of it was pretty reasonable tweaks to the bracket system, those being some clarification of the language of different brackets, and the moving of a handful of cards off the Game Changer list. The more controversial part of the announcement was the potential future changes part, where Gavin discussed the potential future banning of Rhystic Study and Thassa's Oracle, and the possible tweak of allowing hybrid mana symbols.
And I want to say, like, comments like this are actually really important, even if they don't move forward with the change, because discussing change is so important. Being open to it and going through the process of change management is really important to not only organization of development, but also furthering the understanding of certain concepts to a player base within this game structure. So why are certain decisions made? How do you go about kind of reasoning to that change and speaking on it so that players can actually reference it? So for example, if the hybrid mana change never goes about, we can still reference a whole period of time where a bunch of videos were made, articles were made, discussion was had, how it started, how it ended. We can go through the whole process instead of kind of playing amongst ourselves, twiddling our fiddle thumbs and everything, trying to guess how it would go about, you know, kind of like the whole reserve list thing. How, oh yeah, Wizards of the Coast would be in a legal battle. Like, oh, that doesn't matter. It wouldn't be that bad, right? Like, we don't actually know how that would go, but people have been advocating for a change like this and rule zeroing in changes like this for years, for so long, right? Like, I'm pretty sure there was a discussion like this had even with the if I remember correctly, yeah, there was a discussion like this had with the previous rules committee of the Commander format, and they outright just said no. And so even though they said no, a discussion like this was brought up. These discussions have been had. And so now this is another modern age version of this where Commander is popular, more Magic players come across this. And so again, even if this doesn't happen, the change management process, I should say, is very important for people to witness.
To be considered either of their colors for the sake of color identity. The conversation that has spawned forth about hybrid mana has kind of fascinated me in the past couple weeks, mainly because of how unexpectedly strong and unexpectedly plentiful the opinions have been, particularly opinions from the anti-hybrid mana side. There was an initial wave of anti-hybrid YouTube videos, and all videos about the subject have seen massive numbers of comments, with a lot of people making a heated case for their side in this debate. This has been fascinating to me because the hybrid mana change seems like such a low-stakes issue, no matter what side you fall on. But the community response to this...
Okay, hold on. Rest in peace, EDH 1995 to 2025. Who was playing EDH? And I'm telling you, Magic players are simultaneously some of the most interesting, thought-provoking, good-meaning people, and also some of the most stupid, friggin' uninformed losers at the same time, right? Like, you have one side of the group and you have the other side. Like, what does this statement even mean? Like, what? Like, it's just conspiracy theorism, and then rest in peace, the most popular format in the game that's thriving and growing, and then 1995 to 2005. What? Magic has fallen. Like, I'm sorry, is this Helm's Deep? Because Helm's Deep ain't never fall, as far as I'm aware, right? They were saved. Mans came, all right? But I don't know. Anyone who trusts R&D is a moron. I don't think that's completely true. Anyway, I'm not going to go through all these comments. It's just like this one really, like, I was just going over it. This one really, like, what does this even mean? Magic has fallen is also kind of so funny. That's, I don't know. Who wrote this unironically?
Suggested change has felt like what it would be if Wizards of the Coast was suggesting literally abolishing color identity. So I want to dig a bit into why that is, what caused this. And to start, let's talk about literally abolishing color identity. Kind of. In an episode of the Magic Mirror podcast released in March, I gave a sort of devil's advocate case for why color identity should be abolished, and here are a couple key points from that. 1. Magic the Gathering is a game based around mana and colors, with card designs existing around the fact that colors are malleable and decks can venture between colors at the cost of deck space and deck consistency. There are a lot of designs that color identity renders clunky, awkward, and nonsensical, and this restricts players who wish to play them. 2. Advocates of color identity will argue that limitations are good for decks, but color identity doesn't achieve this in a way that is consistent or fair. Somebody can play a 5-color commander and avoid this restriction entirely, whereas somebody who enjoys a specific monocolor commander that wants extra support from other colors gets unfairly limited.
So for those of you that don't understand, like, the concept of the 5-color commander is quite literally like, you can play the type of deck you want. Like, you can play a mono red deck by playing a 5-color deck, and then the mono red deck is built around, like, it's the same 99, but your commander is different. Maybe it has a similar effect, but your deck is built with the same synergies. And then you play some hybrid mana cards that you wish was in your monocolor deck. That's the concept. And yes, I don't have Ragavan as my commander. Duretti isn't there. Like, it's not the same thing, right? Like, I don't get my commander out on turn 1. I don't get my my artifact toolbox. You can put them in the 99. You can build the general concept of what you want to do in the 99. Now, of course, there are specific commanders that you can't do that with. So yes, there are exceptions to the rule, but generally speaking, the type of value engine decks, the type of mid-range soup piles that many commander players build, honestly, me included as well, they can generally be achieved by making, again, a 5-color deck where you may be able to cast your commander, you build your mana base that way, but you can then play that 2-color deck, that 3-color deck, that even monocolor deck, and play the hybrid mana cards in there that you wish you could play alongside that. You could play the mono red deck with the Celestia card. You could play a bunch of mountains, and then you can cast the Celestia card that randomly works with your mono red deck. It's a cool concept for a deck, and I think that is fair. It's just not a concept that is completely well explored in the EDH space, and I would love for people to go over it.
Commander is also a casual format about expression where players can always choose their own limitations if they want them, and the format imposing limitations on its own goes against this spirit a bit. I think these arguments are interesting, and they make me curious what a world without color identity would look like. Despite this, in that podcast, I mentioned that I ultimately don't support the abolition of color identity at this point, preferring instead a set of changes that fix 2 cases where color identity feels particularly unintuitive to me, those being cards whose identity is defined by indicators rather than symbols, and hybrid mana. This is more or less still the position I hold at this point, 8 months later. Color identity should stay, but fixing up these weird side cases would be neat, and probably good for the format in the long term.
Shout out to Popper Staple Pawn Profit, I had to.
You can agree with that or not, and I'm not here to convince you about it either way, because this isn't a video about hybrid mana. Given that, you may be wondering why I'm even bringing this up, and that's because the comments on that video basically agree with me, and that's interesting, right? In the context of hearing a devil's advocate argument against color identity and then being presented with these softer changes, people went, oh yeah, I like color identity, but those changes make sense. Am I some kind of god of rhetoric, fooling innocent commander players into supporting a hybrid mana change by positioning it as the reasonable centrist position in the color identity debate? Maybe, but regardless of framing, I have to wonder what other elements contributed to this shift. The timing? The atmosphere within the EDH community? The party making the suggestion? I don't know the exact split, but my best.
I would actually argue a large part of it is the party. Like a lot of content creators curate their own environments of, their own cults, if you will, as an extreme word to use. And I think Salubrious Snail kind of curates a more, on average, more positive and high thinking version of the CEDH community, or EDH community, not CEDH, the Commander community at large. And so I feel like these people are more likely to, even if they disagree, have a conversation or are willing to have that conversation, maybe come off as less aggressive, whereas maybe the content creators like myself that maybe are shit disturbers and invoke more extreme emotions might bring about the worst in people or attract more of those people, if you will. So I don't know. I don't see a lot of negative discourse around Salubrious Snail, if at all, on, the largest spaces online. Not that I've really looked for it. Maybe it does exist. So I would argue that maybe it's just the fact that Salubrious Snail is well received, and also Salubrious is someone that brings across their information in a succinct and well-mannered way. So I would also argue it's probably a mix of that. I think there are other places in Magic communities, like if you went to a Saffron Olive video, a Tomer video, or something like that, people that are more kind of on either side of certain debates or give out more hot take opinions, they attract maybe people that would allow for more negative discourse. So I think that's where it would be, but that's not to disparage the Salubrious Snail folks out there. I think, again, on average, they feel like it feels like a community that would be more constructive in terms of their discussions. So maybe they feel like they're agreeing more, but they're kind of not. I don't know.
Best guess is that it's probably a mix of these things, and I'm going to go through these now. Firstly, the timing. One version of this idea is that players dislike this change happening amidst hybrid mana being more heavily printed, both in recent sets and in the upcoming set, Lorwyn Eclipse. I don't think this is a major factor, or at least I hope it isn't, because it would be a very silly thing to be a major factor. Of course, Wizards of the Coast is going to suggest changes to the Commander format. At times it feels most salient to do so based on what is being printed currently. In fact, it'd be a lot weirder if they made the hybrid mana change during a period where very little hybrid mana was getting printed.
Right.
Just so I don't leave it unsaid.
Yeah, like the opposite is even weirder. And I think the command zone also kind of disproved this as well. Yes, on average, we are getting technically more, if not similar amounts of hybrid mana being produced. But in the future, as more sets get printed on average every year than previous years, right? We have 7 sets in standard, we are going to see an increase in the amount of hybrid mana per year. But does that necessarily mean we're getting more printed set by set? Not really. It just means we have more sets that year. So it could just be it's a confirmation of bias through a factor that's not being considered. I don't know. There's a word for that. There is a saying for that is not coming to me right now. But, yeah, we're going to have more menace, more flying, whatever. Oh my God, the big flying is going to take over Magic, It's just the fact that we have more sets that year as a level 1 kind of, this is probably the reason why we have more of X. It may not be necessarily that Lorwyn is coming around, but, hopefully not.
This is a minor change and isn't going to meaningfully increase sales of Lorwyn Eclipse, and Wizards of the Coast knows that. No. The bigger factor here is what has happened in the recent past. We just came out of a summer that saw a lot of dissatisfaction from the community, with the Spider-Man set being both an aesthetically jarring Universes Beyond set and a poor quality set in its own right. This was paired with an announcement that next year will feature 4 different standard legal Universes Beyond sets out of a dizzying total of 7 sets.
One of which they believe will actually do better than Final Fantasy, if y'all remember. They got big hopes for this year. I'm covering Star Trek underneath my camera, by the way.
I don't think I have the same emotional reaction to this as a lot of people, but it's certainly a bummer. I don't like the Spider-Man set, and I don't like being overwhelmed with endless standard legal Universes Beyond sets. All of this to say, there has been a lot to be frustrated about, and the online Magic community has been hotboxing anger and resentment in all of its various spaces and subspaces and niches for the past several months.
This is what I've
With
been
the
saying.
Spider-Man set being past us now, that anger has been looking for a new target to explode out at. And this month, that something ended up being a suggested hybrid mana change.
That and stuff like D4. But it looks like we're in an ad because I didn't buy YouTube Premium. Let's skip this.
Right now with community trust. I don't know who exactly to pin the blame on for every decision, but the collective decision-making power at Wizards of the Coast and its parent company Hasbro has been making a lot of pretty short-sighted choices. Choices that they probably know will bother the player base. This is not to say that it's been all bad for EDH. The bracket system rollout has been going pretty smoothly, IMHO, and the general quality of products aimed at the Commander format has been pretty decent lately. But that's arguably part of the problem.
There have been a problem though, you know, as a commander player, as a commander player and eternal 1v1 Magic player, I think we can speak to the power of cards like Barogoyf and Pyrogoyf and other commander cards that were designed for that environment. But were they really designed for that environment? Because they came out around Modern Horizons in those Modern Horizons sets. So maybe they were meant to affect Vintage and Legacy and all that stuff. Really powerful cards that do change the way these formats are played. And power is structured and leveled out in these formats. Like there are a lot of effects of these cards, and maybe that is their way of printing change into these sets without making powerful cards in standard environments, and that's something to recognize as well. Doesn't mean that it is change nonetheless. If it is something that is meant to be that way, that's interesting, because then we're having to now evaluate commander cards for 1v1 formats, which is maybe not something they want to directly address. Maybe it's just there for, you know, maybe it should just be there for reprint value, but I guess net new cards have to be made for the sake of creativity. I don't know. It's also something to think about. I think overall the comment on like bracket system is correct. Maybe that's my experience. Like I am a generally more outgoing and vocal person in my local play groups and communities. I will speak and I will usually generally be the one to start the Rule Zero conversation. I want to set the tone for a fun and effective game of Magic, whether that be Commander or 1v1. It's not that I want to always start the conversation, but I want to be the one to, if not start it, help carry it and keep an open environment. And that is a mindset that lends better to the bracket implementation of versus maybe like pick 10, which was a bit like kind of all over the place and lacked a little bit of structure.
The Commander format has been identified as a cash cow, and a whole lot of decision about what gets printed, when it gets printed, and how it gets printed seem to be motivated by milking that cash cow. So it's in this context that the suggestion of a decision that could be made about the Commander format garners a massive wave of backlash, getting lumped in with all the other decisions that have been made in recent years. So is this a defense of the hybrid-hating player base? On some level, it absolutely is, in the sense that I think much of the current climate that produced this is directly due to decisions made by WotC and or Hasbro.
Of course.
But are people justified in being this angry about the change?
Probably not.
I would say no. A lot of the arguments against hybrid mana are reheated versions of the arguments defending color identity I've heard. Limitations are good, homogenization is bad, designer intent doesn't matter, commander format architect intentions do matter, and so on. As arguments in favor of color identity, these are certainly valid, though a mixed bag in terms of how persuasive I find each of them personally.
Okay.
Dredged up and put in this new context, though, they look very strange because the stakes are so much lower. It's like rhetorical homeopathy. The angle you're arguing is very minor, almost inconsequential, and when you argue it with the passion of somebody whose mother just got insulted, it makes you look like a goofball. Like, take the question, does hybrid mana weaken color identity? My answer would be only a tiny bit at most, particularly if Wizards of the Coast is more careful with the hybrid color pie in the future, which I kind of assume they will be for reasons I'm throwing on screen but will not pause to elaborate on.
This is an intentional change that would make color pie breaks feel more feature than hybrid. WotC knows that the player feels strongly about color and will also scrutinizing. WotC has identified examples of color breaks as things to not be repeated. See, where this like becomes a problem, and I think it's just like because of the further decisions that Wizards has made. I think like the one a lot of people love to quote is the whole Nadu situation, where Nadu, now being banned in Legacy, was banned in Modern, a card that was, you know, originally had a design that was more broken for Commander, and eventually ended up leaving everything anyway, right? Like right now, Nadu, if we kind of take a look at the Scryfall spread here. Oh my God, Scryfall is actually back up. I'm just realizing this now. I was editing my TikToks and it's like not at all. It wasn't. But right now, banned in Modern, Legacy, Commander, Vintage, of course, Timeless, Oathbreaker, formats that everybody plays, by the way. Like these are all like the most popular places to play something like that are banned. And Nadu was designed specifically for Commander, made it into a Modern set, broke Modern, but even went through a final iteration that wasn't properly tested. Like that was actually fully admitted by Wizards of the Coast, which is, I applaud them for it, but is kind of wild to admit. I think like decisions like that also go to make those comments of like not trusting the rule, not only just the rules committee, but the design team as well. With the amount of sets that are coming out in the next year, and the amount of sets that they have designed for. So the sets that are coming out next year, they've already finished their design cycles for them. The sets that are coming out in 2027, they are on probably the later half, if not starting in that. And so these are sets that aren't going to have their proper amount of time to cook with the design team before the time comes for the next set. They have arguably half the amount of time to even do that, because you used to have like 4 sets a year. Now we have like 7, and alongside that, all these supplemental sets and product and all that stuff. So things need to be tested, and they have half the amount of time to even do so. So with all these things combined together, I think it's fair to agree that hybrid mana, yes, doesn't really change the color identity, but I don't think we have good reason other than trust me, bro, to trust WotC's design team to make these changes uniformly. Like, I think for 90 to 95% of cards, like, we can trust this, but there is going to be the 1 to 5% that is going to slip through the cracks, that feels a little too powerful, is too much of a break, or whatever it is. There are going to be problems with this, and I think that's what people fear for good reason.
Then that tiny bit needs to get sifted through the secondary question of how much does color identity erosion harm the Commander format. Even if you think the erosion of color identity is pretty harmful to Commander, which is a reasonable thing to believe, you need to remember that you are not talking about the abolition of color identity. You are talking about a niche change to a very specific set of cards that already have valid arguments to exist within the...
Yeah, so like the false equivalency thing here. I think like, okay, like I'm on the side of a Commander format with no bans. I think there are so many broken things that you can already do in this format, in a format that is managed and self-managed by a community, now given structure through a bracket system. A ban list almost does not make sense with a restricted list already, right? Like we have the game changers list already. Just put everything on a game changers list. You know what I mean? Like, people will not lean towards the broken play patterns and these random one-off Reddit stories of people in small towns where the Commander play group is bad. Those are places that will just die out. Those are kind of stores that will eventually push everyone out and not succeed. Those are stores that will lose and die out because they can't curate their own communities. Let them suffer, right? There are losses to be had here, and I think we are losing, parts of the Commander community, and or kind of pushing them to an extreme of this elitism when we have things like a ban list and a game changers list and then like a watch list and like all this type of stuff. There is a lot of confusion in the Commander format, and I am of that belief that we shouldn't even have a ban list. And so does changing this color identity thing change too much about the format? I don't believe so. I honestly don't. Like, I think there are levels of confusion, but I think people will get over it. There are so many things that have happened in the game of Magic that we have just dealt with, right? Like, we have done functional erratas of cards that have been for positive. Like, think of something like Lightning Bolt. Lightning Bolts used to say target player or whatever, and then we could say, oh, if something targets a player, we could redirect it to a planeswalker. We just said screw that. We errated it and now said Lightning Bolt can deal 3 damage to anything, so that it can be uniformly available to any target. And so they've errated a bunch of like spells that do have that ability. And then we've had erratas that are technically for the worst. Like, we have versions of Companions and Lures of the Dream Den that have the old text, and we've errated them to nerf them and now have new text. Like, there are so many things that we have been okay with as a player base that we will move on from. We will move on from. We will get better from. And if you say we will not, you are wrong. This is not that bad. This is not that bad. I don't believe this is that bad. We need to understand that worse things have happened so far in comparison to this. Now, something worse can happen. It's not a change to hybrid color identity.
Current logic of color identity. I think a lot of players forget that and just pretend they're arguing against the abolishing of color identity, and the result is that conversations end up feeling deeply strange. Or take the idea that an expansion of hybrid mana will allow for the printing of more widely available broken stuff in the future. The video from Tomer over at MTG Goldfish is the best articulation of this argument I've seen, and there is a small part of me that worries what'll happen when we get a Captain America's Wrath next year in hybrid red-white that's broken and $120 and desired by every red or white deck. That could happen, but to contextualize how problematic that is, let's go through the steps of that argument. First of all, how problematic is it if broadly available powerful cards are printed? Well, it's something that has more or less always happened throughout Magic the Gathering's history. But I guess we can say that
there's been constant power creep all the time. Magic just power crept all the time. And I think a lot of people get caught up on this. They're like, please, no power creep. Like, there has to be evolution. Like, the amount of people that piss me and pardon my friends, piss me the fuck off every time someone says, I want to go back to a time in Modern when Liliana the Veil and Tarmogoyf was good. Bro, you're an idiot. You're actually stupid as hell, right? Like, we need to evolve past that, right? Like, it's such a frustrating boomer argument, right? Like, Liliana the Veil and Tarmogoyf don't need to be good anymore. Tarmogoyf literally was not good since the printing of Fatal Push. Fatal Push fundamentally designed what it is to be a removal spell and what it is to be a powerful threat underneath that removal spell. We need to evolve as a format. We need to get better as a Magic player base in many other formats. And that is a singular argument of this. We can have cards be bad again. We can have said powerful cards in previous times be good again, maybe in the future. Kitchen Finks, not a good Magic card anymore. We can be okay with that. There are so many, vast majority of hundreds of thousands of cards that exist in old standard, old legacy, old extended, old modern, whatever it is, that do not see play anymore, are not good anymore because we have better options and we are better off for it. Having better options, better threats, all that stuff matters. It just, all of this stuff needs to evolve equally. That is the problem that happens with the Magic player base and its formats, that they don't realize. The threats don't align with the answers, and then they don't align with the threats back and forth, back and forth. Sometimes the threats are the friggin' answers, and that's how we get like Fury, Grief, and Solitude and all that stuff, like stuff that goes too far above the line. We can make things align, right? Like, I really like the way like Eternal formats have it. Like, honestly, Legacy is such a fantastic format. It's unaccessible thanks to the reserve list and prices, but it's such a fantastic format because of the status quo of the free spells, like the Force of Wills and the Unmask and the cheap not reanimate anymore, but the cheap spells that police each other. Like, it creates a status quo. And again, we have had the idea of power creep throughout Magic's history. We have had formats that are able to manage that, some formats that aren't because the cards aren't balanced appropriately. It's not a problem if power creep happens because the game needs to evolve. It's been happening for years. Just get in line or go play freaking Lorcana or something. Go play a dead TCG. Go play Star Wars TCG or something, right? Like, games evolve, cards get better. This is the reality of the situation. Some games do it worse than others. I would say the One Piece TCG does it worse than others, where leaders literally just get power crept all the time, right? There are better and better and better ways to play certain colors and certain abilities. And so, yes, there are restrictions in terms of how certain leaders are typed out and their support cards. And so, yes, certain leaders will always be like kind of in a silo as good as they are because those support cards are stuck there. But then maybe better support cards get printed for a similar leader in a future one. And so, again, power creep is worse off in so many different games. Magic doesn't have it the worst possible. Y'all just play too much Magic and are stuck in it and probably need to A, go play a different format, or B, just take a freaking break. Like, go play some Stardew Valley, go play some, I don't know, like some Hearthstone or something. Like, just go play something else. Go outside, enjoy a different hobby. And I'm telling you, your experience with Magic will get better, especially if you think power creep is a constant problem in the game and not just a finite problem that occurs every so often. It's not rare, it happens. But to say power creep is a problem in every single set, you're just missing the point. Evolution is required.
It's less ideal in the case of something like the One Ring that is colorless and also has impacts on other formats. Step 2 of this point is, how much does hybrid mana actually impact this? And the answer is that I don't see a whole lot of evidence that this change will lead to a surge in that. Wizards of the Coast already has colorless cards they can use to give a power card to any commander deck. So the best tool for this is already available.
But they've got to balance this like a lot of times. It's not like the One Ring is being printed all the time. And the One Ring is an example of a card that does push the envelope a lot. It's just, I don't know. Like, I don't know if they're doing this with artifacts like as much, even though this is a possibility. And they've talked about how they've nerfed artifacts over time and how artifacts are largely seen as this thing already. Many in franchise 1v1 players already understand this as a concept, how powerful colorless cards can be. And when you have cards that are restricted by specifically colorless mana, that is your balancing factor for something like artifacts. But when you print something like the One Ring that is available through generic mana completely, then your Ancient Tombs and your Soul Lands and all that stuff become even more powerful. Whereas something that might be better off cast by Eldrazi Temple is balanced because something like that won't be cast in a deck full of forests and swamps and all that stuff, right? Like, there are ways that they're tuning the dial. They missed the mark on some.
In addition, if we look at the current hybrid mana cards affected by this change, none are staples in their 2-color identities. The top 2 are Cold-Eyed Selkie and Saheeli Sublime Artificer, not exactly terrifying must-plays. Will Wizards of the Coast start rubbing their hands together evilly and sending Hybrid Stalkup or Hybrid Beast Whisperer to the printers the second the hybrid mana change happens? Maybe, but probably not. Once again, this is rhetorical homeopathy. The risks in this particular case just aren't that high, and players are using mental stand-ins to make their arguments rather than discussing the reality of the situation. To be clear, it's entirely fair for people to be against the hybrid mana change for either of these 2 reasons. The direction of the disagreement makes sense to me.
Behind me it says more power slop, by the way.
But the scale...
Rightfully so. Of course, I'm going to be the one covering slop. Oink oink, folks. Oink oink.
Of the disagreement looks rather strange, which is why I think other factors I laid out earlier are fueling the heat of this discussion rather than the change itself. I don't think this change is very high stakes for those 2 reasons I just laid out, and even as Wizards of the Coast has been making decisions I dislike, I also don't really buy most versions of slippery slope arguments that claim this is just the beginning, 2 little waves over the top of the conceptual dam that is color identity. Phyrexian mana isn't going to get this treatment because it's already been identified by both Wizards of the Coast and the community as a design outlier. Off-color ability cards aren't going to get added because it'd be simply too large a change and would require other format changes to even remote.
Yeah, like Kenrith having like Wooburg activated abilities, like that's not going to be available in mono red decks, right? Like that's not what this is about. It's something completely different. And also, why did people argue for like Phyrexian mana? Why do you want to play Birthing Pod in mono white decks? Like stop that. Stop trying to break these cards. Like these are like Phyrexian mana. Like, I understand what you're trying to say in concept, but it's a design outlier. Like, don't force it.
And full-fledged color identity abolition definitely isn't going to happen when even an abolition-curious player like myself knows it's a bad idea. I also think it's important to remember that this change wasn't invented by Wizards of the Coast 2 seconds ago. This is something that players and designers alike have suggested and made cases for in the past, including myself several months ago. Not everything needs to be some nefarious machination by a corporation, and to pretend that a hybrid mana change is a brand...
Everything is kind of a nefarious machination by an organization. Come on. Even our concept of a 40-hour work week, you know, like... we're watching YouTube and... come on, everything kind of is, right? Like your whole, your whole materialistic love for Christmas, your need to do well at work to be praised, your the whole, everything is kind of a downstream effect of a cruel option chosen by a company. Come on. It's not a conspiracy.
Asked for by no players is just plainly dishonest. At the end of the day, I still understand why people tar the decision makers at Wizards of the Coast as greedy and corporate and nefarious and other such pejoratives. It seems like this year has really been an inflection point around Universes Beyond due to it suddenly making up a large portion of standard sets. The result is that even many players who were relatively neutral about it in previous years, such as myself, have started to sour on it pretty heavily. And the people who were already against it are finding themselves wading into deeper and deeper levels of dissatisfaction. The current trajectory of the game is not a good one, and there is reason to be unhappy. That said, I also hope that we as a player base can get better at calibrating the temperature of our discussions.
I think there is reason to believe that even though it's not a good one, there are things to look forward to, like the positive reception of Final Fantasy, the positive so far reception of Avatar and its mechanics and the excitement around that set versus something like Spider-Man. Like, again, I've talked about in multiple videos, like there are ways to do Universes Beyond right. There are IPs that are Magic adjacent. There are things that will keep players in the loop. There are also sets like Spider-Man that won't do that just based on IP and implementation. There are reasons to look forward to Magic in the future. There are many reasons not to. I would argue the reasons to look forward to Magic in the future are more than not. And I think people like to blow up their small worldview to change that.
When we respond with disproportionate levels of anger and gloom to lower stakes suggestions, I worry that it weakens our ability to be taken seriously on the things that matter more, and it also distracts from those more important things. There are real decisions being made that have the potential to seriously impact the future trajectory of the game, and the impacts of the hybrid mana suggestion are microscopic compared to the addition of even a single extra standard legal Universes Beyond set. I also think it's better for the health of the community to not blow
Essentially say, we got bigger problems. We got bigger problems.
Every announcement and update way out of proportion. When I see comments declaring every tiny thing as the death of the game, it makes me think of the vast array of spaces across the internet where people marinate in collective despair and pull themselves deeper and deeper into conspiracy and doomerism. It's not that much of a problem just yet, but that's just something I've been getting little whiffs of this year, and it's not healthy. Maybe it's because I've been involved in a wide range of game communities, from flourishing to actively dying, but my general reaction to a game company doing stuff I dislike is to either distance myself from it or take some control into my own hands. The first is absolutely helpful sometimes, and I fully believe there are people discontentedly sticking around with Magic who probably need to move on to other things.
Agreed.
But I'm going to focus on the second. If
like
what Wizards of the Coast is handing you doesn't satisfy your needs, build something for yourself. A format, a subformat, a cube, a community, a different game, or just a playgroup of people looking for the same sort of fun as you are. The best antidote to feeling disempowered and dissatisfied by the decisions of others is to take back.
I think like a lot of people, right? I can't speak for everyone, right? Because the friggin' bean soup what if peoples are going to come for me for this comment, right? So if this doesn't apply for you, you understand that. Don't comment down below giving me your pissy situation. I don't care. Okay, because it's not for you. You're just trying to fight me for the sake of fighting me. Okay, there are so many people out there that would benefit from making a change to their situation. They are just too unwilling to do so, right? You can make a change to your community and go to another LGS. You can make a change to your job situation because you need a better situation where your boss isn't treating you well or you need more money. You can make a change in your local neighborhood because it might be too expensive for you or maybe too dangerous or whatever it is. There are changes that you can make, but you are putting too much weight on other things that you aren't gaining enough value from. You know, people are saying, oh, but I want to live close to my family and friends, but their friends are the ones treating them the worst and making them feel down and not including them in things. And then they go to their family's house and their people are constantly treating them bad and terrible, calling you fat and uneducated, whatever, you know, just like things that you go to your mom and you're like, oh, you gained weight. Oh, wow. Hi, mom. You know, like stuff like that. Right. So why don't you make those changes, right? Go play another format of Magic. Oh, I'm too invested in this. Well, sunk cost fallacy, sell those, save up, go play another format, right? Like it is not treating you well to be in these cesspools and forcing yourself to try and enjoy something that you're not. There are situations and examples, plenty of them, of people that cannot make these changes. And as I said at the beginning of this, that is fine. I can't change your situation, and you are an exception to what I am saying. There are people, however, that can do this. And I'm hoping at least 1 to 2 people out of the thousands or millions or whatever that this affects can go ahead and make that change. Because then that is a positive thing happen. Go play some pre-modern. Go play some cube. Make a limited environment. Go play a completely different game itself. Leave Magic behind and enjoy something else and find a space that is welcoming to you. It doesn't even need to be TCGs. Go play D&D. Go play TTRPGs. Go play multiplayer online games. Get a computer, get a console. Just go play a different game in general and enjoy your free time in a different way that is more productive and conducive to your well-being. If Magic isn't doing it for you. Because I can honestly say, no matter how much y'all believe I complain and hate about the game, I don't. I love this game. I play it constantly. I play it every single freaking day. I, on average, am probably playing more Magic and enjoying Magic more than the majority of y'all. I'm going to be honest. I could probably bet my life on that, right? And so you need to put yourself in a place or put yourself in a direction that can put you in that place when it comes to Magic the Gathering. Half the time, I'd be making this content that rage baits people for clicks. That's what content creation is. That's not a true reflection of who I am in Magic the Gathering at all. If you've met me in real life, I'm a great person. I'm going to pat myself on the back for that. I feel like I'm a great person. If I've ever had negative interactions with folks, I ask them to point it out and I will correct that behavior because I don't want to be that person either in the Magic the Gathering community. You shouldn't be that person either. Let's keep it going.
Control of your own enjoyment. That's undoubtedly harder than just accepting what a game company is actively handing you, but the potential benefits are well worth the effort. Thanks for watching, and thanks to Architect for supporting the channel. I've been working to finish my fall supporter deck review, and it makes life so much easier when I can port somebody's deck into Architect, do all the necessary categorization and analysis to get an idea of what's going on, and then have the in-website categories look nice enough for me to be happy just throwing them into a video as a visual. I've also been brewing a couple new decks lately, and if you want to check those out, a link to my decks is in the description. I also want to thank my patrons for their ongoing support of everything I do here. I had some stuff to say about the nature of design intent that didn't feel quite at home in this video, so I threw those thoughts in their own separate video for supporters. Okay. If that's something you want to hear me talk about, you can become a YouTube member or a patron today.
Nice. Okay. Fair enough. Well, in that case, I think I largely agree. I think a lot of people are just upset and kind of focus on low-hanging fruit. There are bigger problems to be had, things that people refuse to address in their own communities of Magic. And I think we need to do a better job of doing so. Again, whether or not the hybrid mana change goes through, I don't mind. Either way, I'm not super deep for and against it. This is the only video I've done about this. I refuse to make this video because this is the dumbest thing in the world. It's so dumb. I get it. I've talked about so many other dumb things, and this is where I stake my thing in. I just thought a meta discussion was kind of funny. I agree with Snail. I don't know. I think we just need to do better as players here. I also need to do better as a creator. I can admit that wholeheartedly. I just don't know what that better is, because every time I make positive content, nobody watches it. Do I keep doing that and lose viewers and subscribers? Tough world out here on the internet.